So what we normally do with these presentations is the idea is to keep it very, very informal. We like to hear from you in respect of what you think should be in the budget or needs to be thought about in the budget, or issues that you want to raise with us. You, of course, don't have to raise everything today, because we hope to give you a bit more information in respect of, thank you, in respect of how the budget is normally put together. So we'll show you a couple of slides in respect of what we consider when we do the budget. What are the key issues that we mention that you may not understand? For example, when we stand up and deliver the budget, we talk about foreign reserves. So we like you to understand what is foreign reserves. We like you to understand is what does another country look at when they look at Fiji to see how well the Fijian economy is doing. So at least you get some understanding of it. After today's discussions, you may decide to make some submissions. And so we'll give you an email address that you can send submissions to. You, of course, can stand up here and give some submissions or raise some issues. Now, the process is this. We were in, on Monday, we were in Navua to meet up with all the schools from the Seru and Namosi area. In the afternoon, we were at Suva Grammar School for all the schools in Suva. On Tuesday, we were in Nosori, Taliwaneta Siri schools. Yesterday morning, we were in Singatoga Methodist, Nanonga Navosa schools. In the afternoon at Sri Vivekananda College, all the Nandi schools. This morning we had Natabua, all the Lautoka schools. And of course, we are here with you today. These consultations will carry out in the next couple of weeks. The Permanent Secretary will meet, the Permanent Secretary for Economy will meet all the Permanent Secretaries from the other ministries. Those ministries will make their submissions also. She will raise with them some of the issues that have been raised in the public consultations. For example, some of you we may raise issues about buses or bus fares or toppers or tells, or even about a road in your area that you may come from. Those are the issues that she'll also raise with them. The ministries with the respective permanent secretaries will work out as to what they want included in the budget. We then have further consultations with other parts of Fiji, and then the permanent secretary and I will meet the other ministers and the permanent secretaries once again to finalize the budget. And then, of course, on budget day, and now last year we started delivering the budget in evening time. You know, we go to Parliament in the evening around about 7 p.m. So you're sitting at home having your nice hot meal, and we'll be standing there and delivering the budget. So you can watch and listen as to what's being delivered. So when we deliver the budget, by law, so when I stand up at night time and deliver the budget, by law, we have to give at least 6 days to all the political parties to look at the budget, and then we meet again in Parliament and we debate the budget. So people stand up in Parliament and saying, you are giving, $1 million for Xavier School. Why are you giving that? Where is that money going to? How will it be used? Or you're building a new bridge in Moto. Where is that money coming from? Why are you building a new bridge? Why aren't you building a bridge in Serua? Those are the things that we debate. And that's what the opposition actually goes through, and we, of course, answer questions. We then, of course, debate it, and the budget gets passed, and the budget then comes into effect from 1st of August. Our financial year now is from 1st of August to the 31st of July. This is why the budget is called the 2017-2018 budget. Before, when our financial year used to be from 1 January to 31st December, it was simply called the 2017 budget or 2016 budget. But now it's 2017-2018 budget, as is the budget of this year called 2016-2017 budget. Now then, once the budget gets passed, the budget becomes applicable from the 1st of August. The one thing that becomes applicable even before budget gets debated is the day that I stand up and deliver the budget. Should we announce any tariff increase or duty increase or excise increase, that duty or tariff becomes applicable from midnight of that night. So if I stand up on Thursday night at 7 p.m. and say that, this is the amount of money we allocated, and we will be increasing the duty on cigarettes or alcohol or reducing the duty on some other product, soon after we announce it, after midnight, the duty comes into effect. So hopefully none of you smoke cigarettes, but if you were going to buy cigarettes, the next day when you go and buy cigarettes, the price would have gone up by 10%, if we say it's gone up by 10%. So that's how it works. So the budget does not come into effect till the 1st of August, but any tariff or duty increase or decrease comes into effect from midnight of that night. So before we open up the floor for you to make your submissions or ask any questions, please don't hesitate to ask any question. Nothing is too silly or too hard. If you want to discuss anything, you can do so. If you have any suggestions, you can do so. But before we do that, we thought we'd give you a very quick snapshot of the economy. Quick snapshot of where we are as a country in respect of the fundamentals of the economy. And these figures are put together by an independent body that is the Reserve Bank of Fiji. They monitor all of these things. They monitor economic growth. They monitor, for example, sales, etc. So let's put up the first slide. The first slide looks at economic growth. Now, this is only the second time in Fiji's history since independence has the economy grown 7 years in a row. Now, why is economic growth important? Economic growth creates jobs. The higher the economic growth, the better it is. It means the economy is growing more and more. When the economy grows more and more, people are spending more money. When people are spending more money, there's a requirement for more services. When there's a requirement for more services, people get employment, people get jobs, people get money in their pocket. So economic growth is very important. So we have the economy over here growing 7 years in a row. We expect it to grow 8, 9 years, which will be unprecedented. So going forward, you can see the economy is expected to grow even further. There's a slowdown here. Why? We had Cyclone Winston. Whenever we have a cyclone, we don't like it. Because of course, apart from the fact it damages your homes, damages roads, bridges, jetties, it deprives people of the income. Generally, when we have a cyclone, a large one, you find the economy has a negative growth rate, which is what we had here, Cyclone Mick. The economy went into negative growth. This time when we had Winston, it continued to grow. It slowed down, but it still nonetheless is continuing to grow, which is a positive thing. Next one, please. Now, what are the things that makes the economy grow in Fiji's case at the moment? You can see agriculture contributes about 0.31%. Fisheries is very small, 0.02. Forestry is even smaller, 0.01. Very small contribution. Manufacturing is quite large, it's about 0.56. We make a lot of things in Fiji, make a lot of things in Ba. You guys make wire fences, you make plastic tubs, you make plastic chairs, you make nails. We also make sugar over here. We make lots of other things. We make soap. All these things comes into manufacturing. Manufacturing is quite large. The other one is construction. Construction contributes about 0.33%. Construction is very important. In fact, unfortunately, previously in Fiji, nobody's ever looked at the construction industry seriously. The reason why construction is very important, ladies and gentlemen, is because if, for example, Xavier decided to build another hall, when you build another hall, a new building, you need somebody to come and dig the foundation. You need somebody to lay the steel. You need somebody to pour the concrete. You need somebody to lay the bricks. You need somebody to do the plastering. You need somebody to do the painting. You need somebody to do the plumbing. You need somebody to do the electrical works. You need somebody to put the roof. You need people to build. When you need people to build, you pay them wages. When you pay them wages, they have money in their pocket. When they have money in their pocket, they go to the shop. Somebody may buy a carton of beer. Somebody may buy new shirts. Somebody may buy a second-hand car. Somebody may buy a new watch. What that happens is then money circulates in the economy. When money circulates in the economy, if the shopkeeper feels he's getting a lot of customers or she's getting a lot of customers, they may say, okay, look, I think I need 2 more shop assistants. So it creates employment. So construction is very, very important. But at the moment, unfortunately in Fiji, we don't have very good tradespeople. We have actually workers in Fiji at the moment from Bangladesh, from Philippines, from Indonesia, because there is not enough people to do professional tiling, not enough people to do professional finishing in buildings, the modern day requirements. So there's a huge shortage of tradespeople in Fiji. This is why the technical colleges have been set up. We need good joiners, we need good plumbers, we need good tiles people who can do professional finishing. AFL at the moment is doing a $130 million renovation of Nadi Airport. The people who laid the tiles came from Samoa. Because these guys are very, very good at their job. You know, you can't do the crooked tile laying. You need people who can do professional finishing. So there's a lot of job opportunities in that area. Other areas of the economy is mining, electricity, financial services. Fiji is a hub. A lot of people using financial services, transport, wholesale, retail, accommodation, and the others. For a government's perspective, we need to have many different things that contribute to economic growth. If we are only dependent on one or two things, if, for example, we were entirely dependent on agriculture, say agriculture had most of it. If you have a cyclone, the agriculture sector goes down, the entire country suffers. If you have what you call a broad-based growth, that you have many, many things contributing to economic growth, then you are mitigating your risk. If one thing goes bad, you can still depend on others. So that's our job. That's what we try and do. That's how we've been strategizing. And the way to only do that is that a good government will always plan for the future. You can't think only up till next year. You have to think 20 years down the line. Why do you think we are consulting you? You people are the majority of the Fijian population. 69.4% of the Fijian population is below the age of 40. You are the majority, I'm in the minority category. You see, you people will drive the future of this country. In a very few years' time, you'll become mothers and fathers. You'll become businessmen and women. You'll be employees. You'll become politicians. You'll become whatever, as long as you stay in Fiji. Stay in Fiji, please, don't go. A lot of opportunities. You'll become doctors, nurses, engineers. So you are the people who will drive the intellectual growth of the country, the economic growth of the country. This is why we need to talk to you, we need to consult you. But we as a government, our responsibility is to make sure that we do the right thing so that your future is secure. You are majority of the people now. In about 40 years' time, you'll become old. So majority of the population of Fiji will be in the older category. So what kind of retirement plans do we have for you? What type of retirement homes do we have? What type of medical facilities will we require if the bulk of the population will be much older? What will be the quality of your life? Will you all have diabetes? Will you all have high blood pressure? So these are the things that any country needs to think about. Unfortunately, a lot of people in politics previously have always thought up till their noses, or up till next year to just get votes. We as a government need to think about 20 years down the track. This is why we're developing a national development plan. Next slide, please. Now, what are the things that we look at to see how the economy is doing? The value of building permits issued between January and September 2016 was 12.5%, 12.7%. The value of work put in place. In other words, people have applied to put up new buildings and it's gone up by 12.5%, the value of it. The actual work being constructed has gone up by 10.5%. Remember, this is also in between Winston. If you look at it now, this would be a lot higher. Domestic cement sales went up by 11.1%. People don't buy cement to keep it under their house. They buy cement to build things. The cement will go bad. So if you look at the number of domestic cement sales went up. Imports of investment goods. These investment goods are things that people import from overseas, like machinery. Right? So if somebody's going to import machinery or factory parts, that means they're going to invest. When they invest, it's going to create jobs. It's going to create output. Your GDP, your gross domestic product will increase. Government capex. Capex means capital expenditure. Government's capital expenditure has increased by 7.8%. What is that? We build a new bridge in Moto. We build new roads and bridges. We're building new hospitals, nurses, health centers. All of those things, when we build, we hire people. The contractors go out and hire people. They hire laborers, they hire tradespeople. So money gets into the economy. And we are building for the future. These are the things that actually went down: new investment lending, lending for real estate. Stay on the other one, please. Lending for building and construction. This is from the private banks, went down by 1%. Now we have what we call the consumption indicators. These are things like, you probably see a lot more cars on the roads now. Now one of the reasons why lots of cars on the roads, because we reduced duty on hybrid vehicles, a lot of what Priuses or whatever they call. You see a lot of those vehicles on the roads. Because people are also finding it easier to buy cars, the duty went down, plus also people have more money in their pocket. So the number of new vehicles registered went up by 27.5%. The second-hand vehicle registration went up by 7.8%. The new lending to wholesale and retail and trade went up by 13.2%. Imports of consumption goods. See this young man here, he's wearing a watch. This watch is not made in Fiji. This badge he's wearing, maybe the engraving was done in Fiji, but the material on which it is engraved does not come from Fiji. This shirt he's wearing was sewn in Fiji, but the fabric comes from overseas. Maybe he's wearing hair gel. The hair gel is not made in Fiji. The hair gel comes from overseas. So these are what you call consumption goods. The perfume this young lady may be wearing, the deodorant that you're wearing, is not made in Fiji. So when those consumption good items increases, you know that people are spending money. So it goes to show there's confidence. So import of consumption goods went up by 14.7%. PAYE, this is taxes you pay when you're working. That went up by 4.9%. Why? Because more people were being employed. Or salaries have gone up. New job advertisements. The Reserve Bank of Fiji looks at the number of new job advertisements in the Fiji Times. It went up by 15.1%. We've asked them to look at the Fiji Sun too, because we as government, for example, don't advertise in Fiji Times. We only advertise our jobs in the Fiji Sun. So they need to look at that. So that obviously is a good indicator too, and that probably go up. Personal remittances. We have a lot of people who work as rugby players in France, in Japan, Australia, New Zealand. We have nurses who work overseas. We have friends and relatives that live overseas, and they send money back. Personal remittances is money being sent back to Fiji by people who may be Fijians, who may not be Fijians, but sending money back to Fiji for people in Fiji. That went up. VAT. Even though VAT declined from 15% to 9%, we are collecting more money from VAT because there are a lot of spending going on. So before, because the price of goods on a VAT item has come down by 6%, they say, I might as well buy another, tin of mutton or whatever, because the price has come down. Or because people have a lot more money, they're maybe buying more beer, or more shirts, or more dresses, or maybe they're spending more money in perfumes, whatever the case may be. That's how VAT collection has gone up. New lending to private individuals decreased by 4.7%. Please tell me if I'm going too fast. Now this is over here, vehicle registration that I was mentioning to you. You see, in 2005, there were 6,000, sorry, I can't, 6,000 or 5,000, 6,000, sorry, 6,000, sorry, I'm a bit blind, 6,000 6,000 second-hand vehicles were registered, new ones, and 3,300, 2005. Look at it last year, 10,000. 10,000 new second-hand new vehicles came on the road, and nearly 5,000 brand new vehicles came on the road. You go to Suva Nasori now, it takes, if you're traveling from Nasinu, it takes like over an hour to travel in the morning period from Nasinu to Suva. There's so much traffic. People love to own their own cars. People in Fiji, it's like, if you get a good job, the first thing people like to do is buy their own car. It's a sign of social mobility. So you say, oh yeah, my son's got a new car, or my daughter's got a new car. So a lot of people use that as a sign of showing that they progress well. But of course, it poses a lot of issues too. People now want wider roads, they want 4 lanes, but also it leads to pollution too. So there are some issues we need to look at, but as far as consumption is concerned, that's increased quite significantly. Retail sales, the Reserve Bank also looks at how much money you're spending in shops. And you can see that the retail sales, in particular since 2007, has continuously been growing. Of course, there's a bit of a dampening of it because of Winston, but we expect that to be quite buoyant. Inflation, this is very important. We as a government have a target of keeping inflation fairly low. You can see from 2014, we've kept inflation below 2%. There's a slight peak there. And it kept on going down, except for when Winston took place. Whenever you have a cyclone, price of things go up. bundle of beans used to cost $5 after Cyclone Winston. Many farms got damaged. In Suva, a bunch of bananas cost $20, a small bunch like this. $20. My son loves bananas. I had a hole in my pocket. He also wants me to buy bananas all the time. $20. I just bought it 2 days ago. The same bundle now costs $5. The cost is coming down. The bundle of beans that used to cost $5 is now $2. Some places $2.50. Some places, if you're lucky, you get $1.50 because there's more supply. When there's a high demand and less supply, price of things going up. Yangona is $110 a kilo in some parts in Fiji. Some people still drink it at the same rate. Yangona is $110 a kilo. It used to be $40 a kilo. Why has it increased? Because a lot of the Yangona plants got damaged. So until the Yangona plants more of it come into the market, the price for Yangona will remain high. But you can see after Winston it shot up and then it's coming down now here. We expect this 5.5 to go down even further as more and more things become available in the market and the price comes down. Next slide, please. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. Foreign reserves. This basically determines a lot whether you go bankrupt or not. This young man who bought this watch, the perfume, the deodorant, all the things that we buy from overseas, we need foreign currency to buy it. You buy things in Japanese yen, you buy it in US dollars, you buy it in Australian dollars, New Zealand dollars, euros. You need that currency to be able to buy those things at the border or when we exchange money for goods. International benchmark, you see this dotted line, says that you must have, this is the number of months, that you must have at least 4 months worth of foreign reserves to buy goods from overseas. That's the benchmark. If you go below that, you're in troubled waters. And there's also banks look at it to see whether you're healthy or not. 2005, we had only $549 million of foreign reserves. Today, we have $1.9 billion worth of foreign reserves. We're in a healthy position. So also when your foreign reserves are high, when banks want to lend you money, when overseas investors look at it, they say, oh, this is good. Your interest rate actually comes down because your foreign reserves are quite healthy. And we have 5.2 months worth of foreign reserves. We, of course, want it to go higher, but we still are in a much better position compared to what we were compared about 10 years ago. This is very important too, fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is, no government in Fiji has ever had a surplus budget except for twice in our history. In other words, we spend more, since independence, we have always spent every year more. We have always spent more than what we collect every year. So government, of course, collects revenue. When you pay VAT, we collect that revenue. When you pay taxes, we collect revenue. But we've always spent more than what we collect. So this is zero. See that line there? The longer the line, the worse it is. The shorter the line, the better it is. In other words, the deficit is low. This 1 year we had a surplus, 0.5%. In other words, we had more than what we actually spent. Having a deficit is not necessarily a bad thing, because most countries in the world actually governments run a deficit budget, as long as you're able to sustain the debt. That's the most important thing. We are a developing country. We don't have many sources of revenue. We were a colonized country. So we have a lot of different dynamics that affects our economy. We don't have large-scale industrialization. We don't have coal. We don't have all those other things that bigger countries have. So it's okay to run a deficit, but you have to manage a deficit. We had a plan, and our plan was to reduce the deficit as the years go by. You can see that it's all coming down. Of course, then we had a cyclone here, and we have this wonderful T.C. Winston here. For T.C. Winston, this year's budget, we are spending $208 million additional money. $135 million of that is going to rebuild schools. Some of you may come from schools that have been damaged by the cyclone. Some of you may know of schools. Cost a lot of money. Do you know 98% of the schools that were damaged by Cyclone Winston, 98% of them did not even have an architectural plan. They did not have an engineering design. So we have to start from scratch. So some people are saying, oh, why is it taking so long? It's because we want to get the engineering right. If we don't get the engineering right, we get a small cyclone again, it get blown away again. We can make it look and do a good paint job, but inside it can be all empty. So now every single school that is being rebuilt, we actually have a design for it. We have an architectural plan for it. We have an engineering standard for it. So next time, God forbid, if it gets blown again, we know exactly what went wrong, what we can do to fix it up. So these are the spends that we have. If Cyclone Winston did not occur, this line would be much shorter, it'd be up to there about. So that's what, when you hear us stand up in Parliament and talk about deficit, that's what we mean. That's what deficit means. Next one, please. Total revenue. This is how much money we make, ladies and gentlemen. We collect money from VAT. We collect money from departure tax. We collect money when you, drive your car and you have a fine. You pay a fine to LTA. When that gentleman brings his watch, he has to pay duty at the border. In 2004, the government had a revenue of $1.1 billion. Today, we have a revenue of $3.1 billion. We've almost tripled our revenue, which is a good thing. We're making more money to spend on you. That's the whole idea. If we make more money, we have to borrow less. So we have been trying to be smart about the way we make revenue and smart about the way that we spend our money. Next one, please. These are the things that contribute to revenue. Like I said, value-added tax contributes about 30%. Direct taxes, these are company taxes, personal taxes. Customs, when people pay duty at the border. There's a lot of chorrowing going on here. And over here too. And businesses are doing it. And we're coming very hard on them. We're collecting more money. We're discovering nearly every new trick they have in their books. We now actually have what we call a whistleblower policy. If somebody gives us information about a company that has been stealing from the system, whoever gives us the right information, they get a certain percentage of what FERCA collects from that information that they get. So if you know anybody, please tell us. You may get a little bit of money overnight. That's very important. And I can talk to you about that later on, because we are concerned about some of the business people. I've had people say to me, oh, the price of certain things have gone up, or food items. In fact, our duty rates are very low. A lot of them actually are charging very large margins. And that's a big issue. Some of them have set up companies overseas. And I want to tell you the story because we just discovered this recently. There's a supermarket chain in Fiji that sells you lamb chops. Right? You can buy lamb chops. It's about $15 a kilo. But the lamb chops they buy in New Zealand is for about $1.50. They have set up a company in New Zealand. This Fijian company has set up a company in New Zealand. So they get the New Zealand company to buy the lamb chops from the New Zealand supplier at $1.50. Then that New Zealand company sells it to the Fijian company here for about $10. And then they sell it to you for $15. So they'll say to you, yeah, we're buying it from New Zealand for $10. We're only making a margin of $5. But in fact, if the company from Fiji bought it directly from the lamb chop supplier, it'd be $1.50. So even if they land it here for $5, they can sell it to you for $7. At least you'll half the price of the lamb chops. But they'll still make money. But they're being very greedy. That's the point. That's what we're trying to go after. It's hard work. You have to have a lot of intelligence gathering that you need to do. That's why we're empowering FERCA, with a lot of powers. We're giving them a lot more resources. Also, we have people, for example, they'll bring in $10 million worth of goods. At the border, they'll say, oh, it's only $2 million worth. Because they know if they have to pay 10% duty, if they under declared, they'll pay 10% of only 2 million. But if they get caught, they'll pay 10% of $10 million. These are the kind of things that goes on. Departure tax, we have 5%. Any tourist that comes to Fiji and leaves Fiji, they pay $200 departure tax. You want to go and visit your relatives in Australia and New Zealand, when you leave, please pay your $200. That's what you'll be doing, it's built in your ticket. And that's what creates revenue. Next one, please. Now, what we've done, we pooled together the amount of money that we spend on infrastructure, health, education, access to justice, social protection. Now, you can see in 2004, we spent $1.3 billion. The previous government, we spent $3.6 billion now. Now, what are these things? These are, for example, for social protection. This is social welfare. We give money to disabled people, single mothers, people who live below poverty line. We spend about $30 million a year. So we give food vouchers, we give cash. That's about $30 million. We've increased it, of course. People now, there are a lot of farmers, for example, in Fiji, a lot of people who live in villages, who've been catching fish all their life. They've never had FNPF, so they don't have a pension. So a lot of them are now being abandoned by their children, or they have nobody to look after them, or the children may have died or may have migrated. So a few years ago, we said, let's help these people. We started off very modestly and said, those people who don't have FNPF and are over the age of 70, we started off by giving them $30 a week, $30 a month, sorry. It's now gone up to $50. But we've also reduced the age now to 66. So anybody that is above the age of 66 now gets $50 a month. Access to justice, legal aid. In 2006, the legal aid used to get only about $400,000. Today, it gets over $5 million. Legal aid is what I call the largest law firm in Fiji. It has over 40 lawyers. If you abandoned child in trying to enforce your rights, a woman who's been abandoned by the spouse, want to claim maintenance for the child, you've been charged for a criminal offense, but you don't have a lawyer and you're below a particular income level, these people will give you legal services. Because of course the theory is, and the practice is, just because you're poor, it doesn't mean you should not have access to a lawyer. If you want to write a will, your parent or your father has died, you want to know how to get a probate, legal aid will give you all the services, because access to justice is very critical to ensure that we have a more democratic society. So we're giving more money to access to justice. Education, of course, all of you, none of you actually pay school fees anymore. Costs a lot of money. We pay $21 million a year to give to the bus companies, to give you subsidized bus fares. TELS, toppers, all of that money comes from the education budget. Health, of course, we've increased the funding for health. But as I've said previously, that unfortunately, one of the critical issues for health is that we don't have enough qualified medical personnel. We don't even have enough qualified dietitians. We don't have enough qualified people who can read MRI machine prints. We need more qualified people who are doing pathology, more lab science. We don't have enough people to do that. That's the only way that you can improve health services. Today, if any one of us in this room has a heart attack, just now, there is no Fijian doctor that can carry out an open heart surgery on any one of us. None whatsoever. It's a very sorry state of affairs. It's quite tragic, actually. In the 21st century, in Fiji, there's no Fijian full-time cardiac surgeon. Not even one. Why? Because there has been no investment in human resource capital development, what we call. Why do you think we're giving you free education? Why do you think we're giving you TELS? Why are we giving you toppers? Because we want you to become those surgeons or engineers or nurses or pathologists or carpenters or joiners. You need to have those qualifications. That's the only way that we'll be able to get the services. Just because somebody does an MBBS and becomes a doctor, you can't expect that person to cut you open and fiddle around with your heart. You need 10, 15 years of experience. You need to be sent overseas for training. You need to get that practical experience. Unfortunately, it was not done before. Can I get someone to heat it? They can, please, or just pour some of it from the thermos. Nobody did that before. So now we have a policy as announced in the budget last year. If you become a doctor and join the public health system, you want to do postgraduate studies, we pay for that, free. We want you to go and do it at FNU. Work during the day, go and study at night. We want you to become the specialist, because we need specialists. So the health sector is not just about building health centers. You need to have the qualified people to run it. It's like you can put up a fantastic building for a school, but you need teachers. And then when you have teachers, you will say, I want good maths and science teachers. I want a good geography teacher. A lot of people have complained about that, saying we don't have qualified maths and science teachers. There's a shortage of good maths and science teachers. A lot of students have complained to us. So we need to be able to target those areas. Some teachers, unfortunately, it's not their fault. They may not necessarily have the training, but they are forced to teach those subjects because there's nobody else to teach them. So the health sector is very much about building the human resource capital. Infrastructure development, of course, is roads, bridges, jetties, and all of that, which I can come to later on. Next slide, please. Now, this is very important. Assuming that McDonald's opens up an outlet here in Ba, and all of you, assuming there's a McDonald's in town, all of you decide to get together now and say, let's have a big party at McDonald's. But you don't have the money, right? So you all go off to ANZ Bank or whichever bank, and you say to the bank manager, can you please lend us some money? We want to have a party. And the bank manager says, no problem, and gives you the money. And you go to McDonald's and you have your big party. You all finish the burgers, you finish your drinks, and you go off to sleep. You wake up in the morning, party's gone, burgers gone, drinks gone, but guess what's left? Your debt. Your debt is left. So you never borrow money for consumption. When your parents when they go to a bank, they go to a bank to maybe build a house, or build an extension to the house, or buy a vehicle. So you must always borrow to build. Otherwise, if you don't, you're in a problem. If you go and borrow money to build, say, this hall, when you paid off the debt, or even when you have the debt, you have something to show for it. When you borrowed the money from ANZ from McDonald's, the next day you got nothing to show for it. But the debt is still there. After you paid off the debt, you still have something to show for it. So any government that spends money, there are two types of spending. One is what you call consumption expenditure, your operating expenditure. To be more specific, operating, what do you need to run on a day-to-day basis? The other one is your capital expenditure, what you actually spend to build. In 2004, 83% of the money that the government spent then went into operating expenditure, which is paying for salaries of ministers, of the civil servants, of the fuel that they use to come here. They stayed at the waterfront hotel in Lautoka last night, paying for their accommodation, the teachers' salaries, the toilet paper, the photocopying paper, whatever it was. That's your operating expenditure. Only 17% went into capital expenditure. So they're spending money, but you have not much to show for it. Today, 60% of the money, as opposed to 83, is spent in operating, but 40% is spent on capital expenditure. So we are spending more and more of our money to have some assets built. That's very important. Next. So you will see when we stand up in Parliament, we'll say the expenditure mix this year is, and that's what we talk about when we mention that. Funding for roads, bridges, and jetties. This is, of course, you can see PWD. They had $55 million. Now you have $527 million. This Moto Bridge, That area that goes to the motor, what's that area called? Nukuloa School and all that. Who's from Nukuloa? Anybody from Nukuloa? Yes? Nukuloa? No? Nukuloa. You got Tahsil roads, right? You didn't have Tahsil roads before. So that money is also from there. That's why we increased the funding. We got a new bridge. Your bridge always used to get flooded or washed away. Now you got a bridge that's very high. So we stopped the flooding. How many of you been to Nandi recently? Please put up your hands. You been to Nandi recently? Gosh, you guys got to get out of Bar, man. Nobody's been to Nandi recently. One person. Two people. Can you tell me something different, what we've done? You got 4-lane roads, right? What else is different? Sorry? No, the roads. What's anything to do with the roads or around the roads? Sorry? No, it's 4-lane, 2-way roads. Nobody else has been to Nandi? God. Please go to Nandi on the next school visit. When you go to Nandi now, you'll see 4-lane roads. 2 lanes going one way, 2 lanes coming the other way. You won't see any overhead electrical cables. There's none. They have electricity, but we put it underground. When Cyclone Winston occurred, 6,000 kilometers of electrical lines went down. 6,000 kilometers of electrical lines went down. We had money to fix it up, but it takes a long time. Some places electricity reached them about 4 months. We ran out of qualified electricians. We had to bring in people from Tonga. We had about 20 or 30 Tongans who came to help FEA. Now, if we have, God forbid, another cyclone next year, or this year, we're still not out of the cyclone period, we're still in April, the electrical cables, the lines we put up, assuming they come down, we have to rebuild them again. We have another cyclone, we rebuild again. It costs money all the time. It's an economic loss to the country too. When we built the 4-lane road in Nandi, just to put the electrical cables, it cost us another $20 million extra. It's expensive. But when the cyclone comes, we don't have to worry about the electrical cables the poles falling down or blowing away. It's all underground, it's fine. Electricity won't get cut off. Before, when PWD and DNR used to build roads, guess what? When they build a road, underneath the road, they put the water pipes. The roads that are being built in Nandi, we've taken the water pipes out, put it on the side of the road. So now, you have a lot of road breakages. So there may be a small hole in the water pipe underneath the road. The water seeps, the ground gets softer. Then when you drive along in your school bus, on the trucks, on the cars, it creates potholes. The road, if you see some roads, they're curved up on the side. It's the weight of the vehicles, it pushes up the mud on the side. So the tahsil comes up. And then they say, oh, there's a water leakage, let's dig up the road. To fix up the water pipe, you're digging up the road. And then they fix up the water pipe, but they leave the hole in the ground. You see, these are what you call not building smart. We have to think for the long term. If we are able to spend this money now, when new people are in the workforce, when you in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, you don't have to worry about these kind of things. You don't have to worry about it at all. Your capital expenditure will be less. But we have to do it now. If you don't do it now, we'll have lots of problems. So the 4-laning road in Nandi, we've taken the water pipes, put it on the side. Electrical cables, put it on the side and underground. TFL lines, taken from the top, put it in the ground. Next time something happens, we just dig the side of the road, you don't dig up the road. That's what you call looking after your assets. It means building smarter. Water and energy. Again, comparison, 92 million, $337 million. We of course give free water, people who have reticulated water systems, up to $30,000 income. We give you 90,250 liters of free water. If your household earns less than $30,000 a year, you have FEA connection, or even if you have what they call the prepay system, the unit cost of electricity is 34 cents. We pay 17 cents for you. So when you get your bill, 17 cents is paid for those people by us. We're also extending the rural electrification. Before, governments required you to be connected to FEA grid. You have to contribute 10%. Now we don't require that. You simply just get connected. We, of course, have a very long list of group of people who need to be connected on that. Education has increased, as you can see. This is where free education came in. It's significantly increasing. This figure will need to increase even more. More and more people, of course, are leaving high school and joining universities. So at least for the next 3-4 years, you'll see it go up. Then, of course, it will equalize. It'll come to a stagnant point, because all these people who started off here in year one would have done the 3-4 years, and they would have gone off. Then you get more people coming in, and that's when it stabilizes. But that will need to keep on going up. You're looking at over $120 million just for TELS, if not even more. But I have been told so many times, so many people who are in their 30s and 40s, or even the late 20s, have said to me, we wish we had free education when we were in high school. I wouldn't have had to drop out. Or a lot of women have actually said this to me, that, you know, there were 5 or 7 of us in the family, and my parents could not afford to pay the school fees of everybody in the beginning of the year, so they decided the girls will stay home. Or when they are boys, the father or mother decided who's the smart one, they send them to school, the other guy had to go and look for a job. It's a reality. Some of these things we don't realize. A lot of people also said, I finished high school, I used to come first all the time, I used to come third all the time, I did really well. And I got a place in university, but I could not go because my father could not pay the university fees. A lot of people. The teachers will tell you, the teachers are shaking their head in agreement. There are a lot of people like that in Fiji. So why are we doing this? Is because, like I said, we want to invest in you, we want to give you a good future. We want you to be able to work in Fiji and outside Fiji too. There are many Fijians now I know who, for example, work for banks in Papua New Guinea. They send money back home, they've been posted there, they get a job here, then they get sent overseas to work there. We have to think outside the box. We also have to get our parents and our teachers to start thinking that being an accountant, an economist, or lawyer is not the only profession in Fiji. We don't have enough land surveyors, town planners, marine scientists, forest conservators, pathologists, science-based subjects. We don't have enough nurses, doctors, engineers. I've got a whole list of areas that we've got. This is why in the toppers, we give priority to those areas. This is why in the toppers, we want more and more people to do this, because we want to spend money to prepare ourselves for the future. This is why people who go to technical colleges and do carpentry and electrical work, we give you TELS. The shortage of people. At the moment, there are qualified electricians who in Fiji are being paid $12, $13 an hour. There's some carpenters and joiners who are being $7, $8 an hour, because there's a shortage of those people, of the skill sets. Health, of course, like I said, we've increased the funding for health. It's gone up to $244 million. We, of course, have a free medicine program. We increased doctors' salaries by up to 80%. At the moment, we are also doing a job evaluation exercise of all civil servants, including your teachers. We did a survey last year. We did a comparison with the private sector. And what we essentially found, that whilst the salaries, when you recruit new people in the civil service, is quite high, or relatively higher than the private sector, as the years go by, the salaries in comparison come down and the private sector comes up. So we need to rebase the salaries for teachers and all the other civil servants. And we will, once we rebase it, we will then have a constant evaluation. Because, sometimes you may find that in the market, there's not enough, say, engineers. So if someone is working as an engineer for government, we need to be able to pay them the right market rate. So these are some of the reforms we're bringing in for those people who want to join the civil service, for you to be aware of that. This is how much money we make, operating revenue, operating expenditure. This is the operating savings. You can see how the savings are increasing. This is in respect of the operations. Government debt, this is very important. A lot of people talk about government debt. The government debt, this is the line you need to be concerned about. The lower the line, this red line, the better off we are. The higher the line, the worse off we are. This does not really matter. It does matter, but it does not really matter. This matters. I'll tell you why. Let me give you an example. Assuming Fiji's wealth, total wealth is $100, right? Total wealth can be simply put it as a gross domestic product. When you say gross domestic product, basically our wealth. So assuming our wealth is $100, we then go out and borrow $20, right? Our total wealth is $100, we borrow $20. What is 20 over 100? What percentage? It's not a trick question. Very simple mathematics. What's 20 over 100? 20%, right? We all in agreement? 20 over 100 is 20%. So your total wealth is $100. You've gone out and borrowed $20. So you will say your debt to GDP ratio is 20%. Agree? GDP being the $100, your debt is $20, your debt to GDP ratio is $20. Okay, which is 20% of your total wealth. Assuming then Fiji becomes richer and Fiji's total wealth is $500 instead of $100. And then we decide to go and borrow $50. $50 is 2.5 times more than $20. But what percentage of 500 is 50? Sorry? 10%. 50 of 500 is 10%. Agreement? Yes? 50 of $500 is 10%. Okay? Some of you look in doubt. Where's your maths teachers? $20 of $100 is 20%. Okay? Agreement? Yes? 50 of 500 is 10%. So even though you have borrowed more money, you borrowed now $50 instead of $20, as a percentage of your GDP is less. So your percentage of what you borrow as per your GDP is what matters. I'll tell you, look over here. In 2006, the then government borrowed $2.8 billion. Okay? $2.8 billion. As a percentage of GDP is 53.3%. In 2013, the government borrowed 3.8. In fact, let's go down here. In 2014, government borrowed $4 billion. But as a percentage of the GDP, it was 47.7. In 2006, they borrowed 2.8 billion. As a percent of GDP is 53.3. In 2014, they borrowed $4 billion. It was only 47.7. Why? Because the economy of Fiji had grown. So it gives you more capacity to borrow. But it is a reduced percentage of your GDP. So in other words, the wealthier you are, the more money you can borrow. But the trick is to manage that borrowing. The trick is, when you borrow money, you have to spend money in the right areas that will make more money for you. Yep. Agree? So if we spending money to get electricity to places where people did not have electricity. So a guy who is catching a fish, who's not a fish, a guy who's catching fish, and he's standing on the side of the road and selling the fish to you. Now he has no electricity. If he does not sell the fish, he either has to eat it himself, or the fish goes rotten, or he may sell it to you for 2 cents. Right? But assuming nobody comes along, he has to eat it, or the fish rots. But if he has a fridge, he can chill the fridge. Next day he puts it out, throws water on it, and he says, fresh fish for sale. You increasing his value. You're increasing his level of productivity. You're giving him more opportunity to earn money because we've connected him to electricity. The people in Moto, when the bridge was washed away, the farmer who could not then bring his beans to the market or his vegetables. But now building a new bridge, you're giving the farmer an opportunity to increase his, or at least not reduce his income level. So that creates economic growth. So to borrow money for the right reasons is a good thing. But we must constantly ensure, so even though this line may go up, this must come down. The trick is to make sure this line comes down as a percentage of your GDP. We have a target. We want to bring down our debt to GDP ratio in the short to medium term to about 40%. But guess what? It went up here. Why did it go up? Winston, our old friend. Because of Winston, we had to borrow directly $208 million. $132 to $135 million in schools, and the rest of it is rehabilitation for farmers, building government quarters, health centers, bridges being washed away, all those sorts of things. So the trick is this line here. So when you talk about debt to GDP ratio in the budget night, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And please tell everybody around you who does not know about it. In Fiji, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have access to this information, nor have people tried to impart that information to them. And we want to impart that information to you. Next slide, please. This is the last slide, so before we open up the floor. So the economy is looking good. We have a growth rate of 3.6%. Recently, there was a household and income survey done. It showed that poverty levels in Fiji reduced from 31% to about 28%. There's also a survey that came out by the World Bank that the inequality in Fiji has reduced too. Inequality measures the gap between the rich and the poor. So, for example, free education means that people are able to reduce that gap. Because before, the poorer you are, the less chances of you to go to school. If you go to if poor people don't go to school, they get the low-class jobs. So it's a cycle of poverty. By giving people education, they're able to get qualifications, they're able to get better jobs, they're able to get better pay, they're able to help their families to lift them out of that poverty level. That's how you get rid of inequality. You have free medicine, electricity, water, those things help. We have favorable growth prospects for medium term. There's a lot of private sector investment, a lot of investment going on in Bar too. We are being very mamangi about the way we run government finances, very conjuice. We have to spend money in the right places. But we also are looking at our debt position. Spend a lot of money on capital expenditure, broad-based growth. You know, about 37% of our GDP comes from tourism. But we have a problem. The problem is this. We see it as a problem because we like to think about the future. 51% of all the tourists who come to Fiji come from Australia. 16% come from New Zealand. If you add those two up, it's nearly 70%. It's about 68, 69%. The others come from North America. We got a few Indians. We got a few Chinese. But the problem is this. If tomorrow the Australian and New Zealand economies don't do well and less of them travel to Fiji, guess what's going to happen to us? We'll suffer greatly. The hotels will run to half a capacity. The people who work as waiters and waitresses, half of them will be sent home. Say, wait till we get more tourists. So we need to manage that risk That's why we want more Indians, we want more Chinese, we want more Europeans, we want more North Americans. So it'd be nice if we had, for example, we have to increase our number intake, but we can say if 20% come from Australia, 15 from New Zealand, 20 from India, 20 from China, 20 from North America. So if one country travels less to Fiji, it does not affect us as badly. You get my drift? So if, assuming that all of these people are in one family, and all of them are able to work, but all of them are big-time Wudesses, they don't want to work, and only these two work. And all of the rest of them depend on them for the income. If the two of them get sick, everybody will suffer. But if all of them worked and three of them got sick, they'll still be okay because they can share the money. That's what you call mitigating your risks. So as a government, this is why we are working together with Fiji Airways. It's now flying to Singapore. We now fly to Hong Kong. We're flying to San Francisco. We're flying to LA. We fly to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and the Pacific Islands. Why are we doing this? Because we are flying to these countries, we want more access. So more and more people can come from different destinations to Fiji. It creates more jobs. This is why in the Toppers scheme, we give Toppers prices for people to work in the tourism sector, tourism management positions. We want more Fijians to work in the management positions. There's opportunities for you. So there's a plan behind the game. And that's what we try and address in the budget. Inflation of foreign reserves are comfortable. Inflation is expected to stabilize below 3%. So ladies and gentlemen, I've done all the talking now. Now you have to talk too. So please, let's keep it as informal as possible. If you have any questions, you have any queries, you have any suggestions, any ideas, I'll get Tui to put up the address. If you want to make any submissions after this, please email it to that address. You may go back as a school and get together with your teachers or get together amongst yourselves and say, we want to make these submissions. You can email it to us. If you're visiting Suva, you can drop it off at that building. If you want to post it, you can post it at that address. It's all there. But please do so within the next 2 weeks or so, because we need to finalize submissions. So we'll open up the floor. There's a mic going around. Please feel free to make or say anything, or you want to ask any questions. We've had a lot of questions. Please feel free to do so. Thank you very much.